So now we are just going to start making the crème caramel, like it's a very classic dessert. It starts with making the caramel syrup. Okay, so there's sugar, water, and there's a little bit of lime juice. We add the lime juice to just avoid the crystallization of the sugar. Okay, so it's just going to stay in the liquid state for quite some time, and we're just going to avoid having the lumps of sugar that gets formed. Okay, so I also have the cake pan ready. Okay, so it's a 5-inch cake pan. I mean, so if you want the cream caramel, the custard to have a bit of height, then you could choose to use a 5-inch pan. Now, if you're going to use like a bigger pan like that, then you can double the recipe. But it doesn't matter, like even if you're going to just pour a little bit, it will still bake and then get you out. You could still slice and eat. It is going to taste the same, but then the point is, how much are you going to have, the height of the dessert, how much are you going to have. Okay, so this is the 5-inch pan, but you could still consider using maybe a 6-inch, or maybe if it is a 4-inch, it's going to be like even taller. Okay, now I'm going to keep this pan handy, and once I have the caramel done, I'm going to pour the caramel into the pan, and I also have the oven mitt ready with me, because the moment I pour the caramel into the pan, it is going to set like really quickly, but I just have to swirl the pan out and let the caramel just spread out as much, and like in few seconds it is going to become hard. And now that is how you prepare the pan before we start cooking the custard part of it. So this is the caramel part of it, and then we will move on to the custard. I don't have stuffs here for the custard, but we'll just first get this one done, and then we will just start working on the custard part. Okay, so I'm just going to add the sugar, water, and the lime juice, and I'm going to switch on the stove. See, just allow the sugar to melt fully in the water before it kind of starts to boil so much. You want the sugar crystals to dissolve completely. So now the sugar is fully dissolved, okay, and now it's just going to begin caramelizing. Okay, so I'm just going to wait and check for the change of color. It's going to slowly turn into amber. Okay, start caramelizing from one side, and then the caramelization will just spread out to the entire bottom. Okay, so but you're just going to keep mixing it. As I start seeing the whiff of smoke coming out, like it's just starting to caramelize, then I'm just going to swirl it up. Until then, I just want to allow it to bubble, and then allow the caramelization to happen. So now it's just caramelizing. Just don't want to go beyond a point also, but just need to be careful on what color it just changes to. You just want to stop at this color. As you can see, the whiff of smoke comes, just take it out immediately. Okay, so this is the color that we have at the moment. So just going to pour it in the pan and pick quickly and get the oven mitt and just quickly swirl it around like that. Just trying to coat the sides of the pan as well. So the bottom will anyway have a like a thicker coat, and it will set also. So I'm just, once the coating of the sides is done, we just leave it down flat. This pan will also be like really very hot because we've poured in the hot caramel into this. Okay, so now this I'll have to set it aside, and then now let's just start making the custard part. So now we are all set to make the custard part of the cream caramel. Okay, now before moving into the custard part, I just want to show you this pan into which I had poured the caramel syrup, right. So you can see it just has become like quite hard, and that will just happen like in less than a minute. Now I am having another bigger pan. You could just have your baking tray as well, and this needs to be placed on top, okay, inside a pan like that. Okay, and once we have the custard made, we will be pouring the custard into the center of this pan, okay, and then have boiling water that you need to pour all around in the bigger pan or the baking tray if you have. Now this is going to get baked in water bath, and that water that we are going to pour also should be like quite hot, so that we will just boil it after we have poured the caramel. I mean the custard what we make, we will pour in this and then have water again, boil the water, and then we pour that water all around in the bigger pan, and then that gets baked. So the cream caramel gets baked in water bath. Okay, so for the ingredients that we have for the custard is the egg whole, yolk, and then that's cream, and then we have milk, the sugar, and then the vanilla. Vanilla I'm going to add later. To just start with, I'm just going to have another bigger bowl here, and have the egg and the yolk poured into this bigger bowl. Okay, then I'm going to use wire whisk and then mix the egg, the yolk, and the sugar together. Okay, and then set this aside. Then I'm just going to have the induction stove and have a saucepan and get the cream in. I'm going to have the milk also go inside, and I'm going to switch on the stove, get the cream and the milk combined. I'm going to wait for the milk and the cream mixture to start bubbling up on the edges. You don't want to let it like completely boil. We're just going to try and heat it up. So wait until the edges are bubbling. Okay, and then what we are going to do, gently pour this very gradually into the eggs mixture. So you're trying to temper the eggs, because now we want to just rise the eggs temperature and then match it up to the temperature of the milk and the cream. Now if you're going to add the eggs into this directly, or add the milk and the cream that is hot into the eggs, like everything together at the same time, and then mix it up, the eggs will get cooked up, and then we are going to have like scrambled pieces of the eggs that we want to avoid. We just want it like, you know, quite smooth and neat as you cut through the dessert after it's baked, for which we are just going to slowly add as we keep whisking the eggs mixture with the sugar. and once the temperature of the egg kind of rises, and then we just kind of pour the rest of the hot milk and cream, and then we have the milk, cream and the eggs all come down to like quite warm stage, and that we will be pouring into the prepared pan in which we have coated with the caramel. And there again, like we are adding maybe the quite warm or like about to boil kind of the stage of the milk and cream. And though how much ever we are going to be careful trying not to scramble the eggs, there could be like possibility of a little bit of scrambles here and there, and so we will be using a sieve, so we could just strain the mixture as we are going to transfer it into the pan. Okay, so it's just beginning to heat up. I'm going to give it a mix. Okay, so it's just started boiling. I'm just going to switch it off and get the bowl of the egg and the yolk. Okay, so I'm just going to first whisk this, and now I'm just going to very gently pour in a slow stream as I am whisking little by little. So once you poured like the first half, the eggs would have tempered, okay, and then again as you are whisking, keep pouring the second half in a steady stream and keep whisking again. You also want the sugar that we have added with the eggs to kind of dissolve, melt and dissolve with this heat. And into this I am going to add the vanilla. Now we have this mixture ready. So I am just going to get this pan right here, and I'm also going to have the sieve right down here, and then I'm just going to start pouring this liquid through the sieve. So I've just poured it till the rim, and now I'm just going to again move this aside carefully, and I'm going to have another bigger bowl in which I'm going to make water boiling, which I'm just going to pour it around and surrounding this particular pan, because like I said, we are going to bake this in water bath. Okay, so gently setting this aside. So I have the water boiling here, like you need that much. So you could just maybe fill half of the pan, like about maybe an inch or inch and a half height of the water that you want to pour. Okay, so you can see it's starting to boil, because you don't want to add room temperature water, because that is going to take some time to heat up inside the oven, and you want the baking to happen like as soon as it goes into the oven. You want the oven to be preheating before all this process, and so the oven is still running at 180 degree Celsius. Okay, and I'm just going to get this pan. So in the pan that is in the middle, you have the caramel as the bottom layer, and then we made the custard and then we poured it there, and then I'm just going to push this to one side. I'll bring it back into the middle. You don't want the water to get mixed up. Okay, I'm going to add all of it. It's like half of the height of the pan. Okay. So, now we have the custard, that's again a liquid, and then there is water that we have poured in, like so everything is just going to move, and we need to be careful, and also it is like kind of too hot. So, you need an oven mitt, and then you need to be lifting this and then be very gentle to go in to the oven. And say maybe if it is like quite far and like you are working in a place where you might have to like very carefully carry it for a longer time, and you are just not sure if you are going to just take it very carefully. The other way of doing it is to put the pan or this tray, the outer bigger tray, and with just the custard and the caramel poured, push this into the oven first, and then have the water poured into the sides of this pan while you still have this pan in the oven. You can just pull out the baking tray that is there in the oven, and that way you will be able to pour, maybe use a ladle or something. That is just to give you tips on how careful you can be, like without having to pour all of it like how I did. And if you think that you will not be able to handle this by shifting it into the oven all by yourself, then take safety measures. But the logic that you need to keep in mind is to have the caramel and the custard in a pan in the middle of another bigger tray or another pan in which you have water that is just filled up to half the height of the pan that we are using, and this will go into the oven to get baked for even about an hour, 45 minutes to 15 minutes, and then you see the top is just crusted a bit and then changing into like a little bit golden and not too much, and it will still be wobbly, but then the inside will quite be set, and because you are also using the water bath for it to get cooked slowly, and it is not going to dry up also. So, I will get back once it is baked, and I will show you how the texture is. So, when you bake you can just cross check with how the top is going to be. So, we know that you are going to have the same results that I will be having after it is baked. So, I will get back after I have baked this one. So, I have taken the cream caramel out of the oven. So, you can see that it is set, it is like being about 10 minutes out of the oven, but when you take it out of the oven, the center is still going to be jiggly, okay, and then you will have a film, a crust kind of a thing forming on the top. If it is kind of really very watery on the top, then it is still not baked. So, what you are going to look at is the crust formation, and the center will still be jiggly, okay, but right now it is not there because it will settle down like say in 10 minutes after you have taken it out of the oven, and then it is like quite warm. At this stage you will just remove this from the pan, okay, of water, and you are not going to use this right away. You cannot be eating it. So, it is a cold dessert, you can't be eating it while it is still warm. Now, this one while it is still warm, we are just going to pop it into the refrigerator overnight, and then the next day is when you will know we will be just placing it upside down into the plate of dessert, and then we are going to transfer it where the caramel is just going to flow out, ooze out, and then we will have the upside down of this is the right side up. So, we are just going to have like a beautiful caramel coated on the bottom of the dessert, which will actually be the top of the dessert, okay. So, now this I am going to place it in the fridge, and then I am going to get back after about 10 hours to show you how it looks like when you are just going to flip it upside down into another plate. So, the cream caramel has been resting in the fridge for about 10 hours now. I have it here, you can see that it is like quite firm now, it is also cold. Now, I have a plate in which I am just going to demold the cream caramel. So, the caramel is just at the bottom, okay, and obviously the sides are quite set, okay. So, I am just going to use a knife and gently release around on the sides. I am just going to place the plate on top of the pan, and then I am just going to flip this upside down. Okay, so you have the caramel, the juicy one, and that is really important that you need to save it, because with each bite it is always really nice to have the caramel syrup just be there in each bite. And you can see the caramel, it's not like really very hard like how it was at the time when we poured in the pan. Okay, so now this is the dessert like itself, but obviously when you're going to serve, you're going to cut them into slices and then you can serve. But then if you want to not cut them and then have it like whole dessert, but you want like single portions, then you can use the ramekins. So you pour the caramel syrup into the ramekins and then have the custard poured into each of the ramekins individually and bake them as separate individual portions. And so you could just demold them into smaller dessert plates and they by themselves will be individual portions for the cream caramel. So now this is like a whole dessert, and obviously if you want to give it to a client who's asked for this much, then it just goes, but then you have to just store them in maybe a dessert plate which has like a lid, and that is how you will be able to transport it together with all the caramel sauce. Okay, so now this I'm just going to cut it in a video after taking the finished photograph of this, and while cutting, and the rest of it you are going to take a look at in a while now. But then with this we come to the end of making a beautiful cream caramel classic dessert, and so I'll be looking forward to catch you up guys in another recipe in the next video.